All right, cool. So
Technology is great, right? Okay, so
yeah, it is. It is.
we're
There,
live with Sean Kaplan. So,
you could just call me Cap, man. But yeah, so I'm
just
glad.
had a great conversation for about 7 minutes that we didn't record, and so we're
Here
going
we
to
are again.
true podcast form of live and raw. We're going to actually get you guys get to listen to it. So, tell us a little bit about you growing up and how you got into loans, and we'll just start that over. So, I apologize.
Yeah, Greg. Thanks. I appreciate you having me here today. So technology, just FYI, I had an ex Tennessee Titan in here filming a podcast one day and did the same thing. He left and I had to realize that, it wasn't on the whole time. But dude, get this, I invited him back in a second time and guess what happened?
Same thing.
Same thing. Same thing. Different type of technology issue, but so it happens. But thanks for having me here. This journey through the mortgage industry is not easy. I don't know about everybody, but I find that most people didn't get in this industry on purpose. And uh, that's pretty much the story of my life. Nothing's ever really happened on purpose, but it's always happened by faith. I mean, it's planned out. I just didn't ever expect any of it. I went to college to be a engineer. I thought that being a civil engineer, I could drive a GMC heavy duty truck with a hard hat and a tie and carry blueprints around and boss people around all day.
Doesn't sound
So
that.
I literally knew nothing about engineering, and I signed up because a guy knocked on our door and said, "Do you want to go to college?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." But things by default had happened in my life. I just always gravitated towards somebody telling me what I needed to do or what I thought I needed to do, because when you grow up with a single mother, like, you're looking for influence in your life. And not having a father there to do that. My father took his own life when I was 6 years old. My sister was 6 months old. He had PTSD from serving in the military, served in the Marine Air Wing, and he took his own life by jumping off a bridge in New York City. And so life was pretty hard. I'm pretty direct about that because there's no way to really dress that up. It was what it was. And when you grow up poor, you grow up poor. But the thing that I learned was I saw my mother, how she always made ends meet. She did whatever it took. She would make a penny stretch into a nickel. She used her resources. She was a great person, so other people would help her out. I mean, we never felt like we needed anything.
Yeah, you probably didn't I mean, you can understand you don't have money, but poor is such a. Sometimes, when I've talked to people, like, we didn't really know we were poor. It's just what it was. That was just.
Right.
It just was part of what
I
we.
just thought it was okay to go to the church on the first Sunday of every month and everybody gave you groceries. And, it was like, oh, yeah, it's a food shelf, right? I thought everybody shopped at garage sales, and I thought everybody got hand-me-downs from their 38 cousins, right? Now it got to a point. There was a so years later, there was a point when I remember my mother took the Huffy BMX that had come out, the Murray, and it was black with the gold handlebars and it had the pegs on it and stuff. I wanted one of those, but we didn't have that type of money. So my mom went and got a used bike and she painted it black and stuff. And I remember being so proud of that bike. Like, she's really crafty. She does arts, crafts, woodworking. She can do all of it. And she redid this bike where it looked good. She taped it all off, painted it, all that. But I remember sitting there in a circle with like 6 or 7 other kids over near the town garage, near the sand pit. And they were all making fun of my bike and laughing at me and stuff. I remember at that time just thinking, like, I wasn't sad. I was like, fuck y'all. It's my bike. Like, I don't care what you think. I know what my mom did. But that's where,
More than the other
that's
anyway.
right. But that's where it did start sitting in. And it was like, well, why do I have jeans with patches on them? Why do I have to wear hemmed, pants or boots that are a little too big for me? Well, because I only got one pair of shoes a year, right? So that kind of went ahead. But then that's when I started where I could make decisions, that I could make money and I could change that outcome. And I wanted it so bad. And I don't remember why. I mean, I used to watch Michael Jordan. I used to watch, a lot of like the bands, and I remember looking at baseball cards and just saying, hey, I'm going to be somebody one day and I'll do whatever it takes. But that's kind of how the journey began. And that's why I ended up, doing a lot of other stuff other people wanted me to do, including going to college, not even knowing what I was going to college for.
So you get into college, you start taking some engineering classes. How did
Yep.
how did you get from there into sales?
So I started taking engineering classes, and I went to Tennessee Tech University for civil engineering. I started with basic engineering, got those 2 years out of the way. And then 2 years into it, my high school girlfriend, my only girlfriend I ever had, and I was her first serious boyfriend, she was going to a neighboring college called MTSU. And I feel bad because I've told this story several times, and eventually, like, it's going to be on a podcast somewhere, and she's going to hear it. But oh well. Um, you know, I ended up moving to that college to be with her after 2 years, changing my degree and everything. I didn't know a single person in Murfreesboro. And the first day I was there, I found out she was cheating on me, and it just crushed me. But I did what my mom taught me, which was that day. I remember I was like, well, I have no choice. I have like $14 in the bank. I got to go work. So I'm going to go interview for some jobs. And so I started working. I got this job at a local restaurant. And I tell you this part of the story because it led to me meeting a mortgage guy. But, up until that point, Greg, now I found myself using drugs, going to meet lots of women. The popularity felt good. I was getting validation from it. It was no longer, hey, you were going to school and you got good grades, or hey, you were a good little Boy Scout. Now it's like, hey, people like me because I've got drugs or I can party or whatever. So the restaurant industry was a flash for me because I was a really, really good kid before I started working in the restaurant industry. And then I kind of just went, took a hard left and late nights doing things I shouldn't do. And that's when I met my wife, who I was just dating, but almost never had a chance with her because I was treating her like the other ladies in my life. And it was all just wound. It was just all hurt, all just wanting something, somebody to, tell me I did a good job. And, that's when life started getting pretty dark. But I ended up meeting a mortgage guy. I was waiting tables. And he said, you seem like a sharp guy. You want to, come out and know about mortgages. And I said, I don't know what the hell a mortgage is. I don't want to sell insurance, whatever. I mean, literally, that's what I told him. And he goes, no, just come see me next Tuesday. Here's my card. So I went out there the following Tuesday and he showed me around the place. He showed me his tax return that said 440,000. And he said, do you want to do that? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, if you want to follow what I'm doing for the next year, I'm going to retire. I'll help you and turn as much of my business as I can over to you. So that's how I got into business. I worked underneath him for a year, taking applications, pulling credit, fishing documents, running across town, because then you only had fax machines. You had to get leads from a fax machine that if you kept them in your car, they would heat up and turn black because the fax paper, right? You had guys that I'd walk into this place and they'd have things up on the window, like tracing signatures and stuff.
No,
They called it arts.
did that. Arts and crafts.
They called it arts and crafts. I was like, what's arts and crafts? They're like, well, this is where we fix documents. And I was like, well, I'm not working here for long. And I didn't. But I remember, Greg, sitting at that desk, and it was just like anything else in my life. I was sitting at this desk because my mentor taught me, have everybody come in with this list of documents, meet you face to face. So I did, but we were next to a Chinese restaurant. And I knew my appointment was at 10:30, and my loan apps at that time probably took like an hour and a half. I don't know, but I remember at 11 o'clock lunch started. So I had to be like ready to go because at 11 o'clock, we always heard them every day banging the pots, yelling, screaming in Chinese through the wall. So we're approaching 11 o'clock and all of a sudden I'm like getting ready to slide the loan app across to get my signatures. And I hear bang, bang, bang. And then they're like yelling at each other. And then next thing you know, I hear water. And I'm like, well, what's that? So I'm sliding another document from the sign, truth in lending, we're going through the good faith estimate. And I look down in my right-hand corner and I see sewage coming up from underneath the commercial wall into my office really slowly. And I'm like, all right, so the clock's ticking. I got to get these docs signed and get these folks out of here. I'm wearing a Goodwill suit. I had it tailored, $14, spent $20 to have it tailored, and now I'm looking all good. And I remember sitting there saying, I know what I want my office to look like one day. I know what I want my business to look like one day, and this is not it. And so I went from one shitty job to kind of another shitty job to another shitty job. just doing the hard work that nobody else wants to do. And through that, it's always opened up a door to a bigger opportunity. And that's kind of my philosophy in my business.
So do you think that from early on, well, it sounds like from early on, that you had your own set of standards of what you thought your business should look like, as far as, I don't know, values like integrity, right?
Yep.
There's some integrity there, and you saw that that wasn't there. So you knew that at some point you would need to remove yourself. Um, a nice office emulates certain things. So it seems like you've always had a high standard. I know I've always said sometimes my standards were so high that wasn't sure how I was going to reach them. But what I did know was that I wasn't willing to go below it. I'm not going to walk all over people just so I can make more money. I would rather just not make as much money, knowing that I'm doing things to my set of beliefs and values. And if I do it long enough, it's 21 years later, right? If I do it long enough, like sometimes you wonder if it's going to come, right? And then all of a sudden you see these little things happen. You're like, I can see it starting to, like I have a mentor that says, anything that you want, just give it away, right? And if you give it away and you give it away and you give it away and you give it away, eventually those things will come back. And so
absolutely,
we were talking
the giver's gain mentality.
Yeah, like if I just educate enough people on how they can be better at sales in the real estate industry, eventually I'll get loans from them.
My mom used to always tell me, because I would get beat up, bullied. I had a mouth on me too, because that was the only way I could defend myself. But then next time they caught me, it would be hell to pay. But, like as I grew up, there were things that happened that I made small cap promises to myself. So keeping my word and integrity, I mean, it's a broad statement for me, because it's not really in my DNA or whatever, but it is in my DNA, because what happened was I kept making small promises to myself, and I kept those small promises, which Tony Robbins says is the best way to build confidence. So I know the value of that integrity and the root of that integrity. So I always, always, always go back to that. The other thing is, growing up without a father, you can either fly with eagles or soar with turkeys. And I was like, well, I'm not hanging out with that guy. So I had a stepfather, and I don't care if he ever sees this, but like this guy would like tell me everything to do, and he never was successful at doing any of it. Like how to work on a car, how to make money. Dude, he would go deer hunt. I deer hunted for him before he divorced my mom for like 8 years. He never even shot a deer ever in 8 years. He put me in a tree like 20 below zero. And so these small kept promises, and my mom one day told me, she said this to me. She goes, Sean, you might not be the biggest. You might not be the strongest. You might not be the smartest. You might not have the best idea. She goes, but I'll give you a secret, something that you can beat everybody else with. Diligence and consistency will always outpace talent. So being obedient in a long direction, like what you just said, Greg, is exactly what my mom told me years ago. And that's just my philosophy, right? Like social media, the content didn't start looking great like this for you and me. It started with, I'm going to take a phone and sit in front of it and look stupid and say something stupid. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to make it better next time. And like, I just know that will beat other people. And that is what's beating other people in my industry around social media. Is I was just like, well, I'm just going to do this consistent, and I'm not going to stop.
To me, your speed to implementation, which is what I am not good at. I'm an overthinker. But I watched you in action. I watched you take a TikTok suggestion, and in less than an hour, like, I don't even know, we went on break for like 15 minutes, and you're back in the room, and you're like, it's already at 3,000 views. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, I'm barely done writing the notes on what to do. And this turkey already went outside and posted something.
1.6 million. Right up there in the corner, 1.6 million.
Yeah. That you did in literally like 8 minutes after you learned.
I wasn't always that way, man. I was the dude that would sign up for the gym, sign up for the coaching, do this, do that, like do it 25% of the time, right? And then just cancel. But then I got in a coaching program about 12 years ago, and I heard a coach say, this guy's still in my life, JJ Mazzo. He's so smart. He lives out in California, SoCal. But JJ said this. He goes, you want to know what the top 2 traits are of all the biggest top producers in the mortgage industry? Because I know we found out, we researched it. I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, number 1, speed to implementation. Number 2, I said, what's number 2? He goes, recovery rate. recovery rate. Too many of us lose a deal and it messes up our whole day, or we have a bad week, or we have a bad month. We take a holiday week instead of a holiday. You know, it's stuff like that. So I was like, all right, if that's the two secrets, then I'm going to implement really fast. So, and I was like, well, that's probably the smart thing to do if I'm paying for these services and paying these coaches. So I have the number one loan officer in the nation right now coaching me. Number one purchase, biggest guy. I mean, he's closing 94 units this month. And I'm like, just tell me exactly what to do and I will do every single thing to the T. And it's a proven record. Why do I need to reinvent it? I'm not smarter. Like, and I don't have the money to do it or the time or the energy to figure it out.
No, that was me when I
So,
went into Go Coaching. I took Amir's Lead to Legacy and I gave it to all my loan officers. I said, just do this. I said, this guy closes
right,
more than our whole company. Like, just do
right,
this. And of
right.
course, nobody did. And so when I started doing loans in like October, I hired a loan partner one. She's a loan partner one, loan partner two. And I said, look, we're going to do all this. So let's get all these emails into your Outlook. We'll change them to put my name and your name. And so if there's something you don't like, we'll switch it up a little bit. But as far as the process goes, like that email goes out this time. This email goes like it's like I watched Amir for years. Why would I think that I could do something better? If I could do it better, I'd already be doing it better. Right. And so if I'll get back into doing loans again, this is the system we're following. We're going to do it like this until we get to, 50 loans a month. And then we can make a decision on we would rather do it this way. But until then,
Right.
like it's find someone that you can jive with. I'm pretty transparent, matter of fact, in your face, which is why I love Amir, because he's exactly the same way. There's really no BS. And then like he's already proven the track record. And so if we just follow it to a T, we're either going to flourish or fail. Those are the only two things. And if we fail, we have to look at why. And maybe we did change something, or maybe we didn't follow the system. But that's why I love
Exactly.
systems, because systems are
right, dude. It's like put the wheels, put the tires, put the axles, put the brakes. Let's put the motor on it. Let's get it off the assembly line. And once you've got that, if you want to freaking, tint the windows, whatever, that's fine. But you find so many loan officers, and I don't mean this in a harsh way. My heart, like I get passionate about this, but I'm coaching them. And it's like, well, I want to talk about email newsletter. And I want to talk about, doing B-roll and reels and my YouTube. And I'm like, you're only doing that because it distracts you and it's sexy and it's fun. Let's go back to this. Like, how many new relationships did you try to intentionally formulate or got on the calendar this week or next week? Like literally just super simple questions. And they're like, well, 0. And I'm like, okay, well, how many of your existing clients have you reached out to, or existing referral partners today? Have you actually either communicated through a DM? If you text, they're like, well, only about 3 or 4 so far. And they're not being intentional about it. And that foundation just isn't there. So then all the rest of the results up here that everybody wants to see, we only judge it by either he is crushing it, bona fide, I know the guy is, I saw his numbers, or, oh my gosh, he looks so good on social media. He must be crushing it, doing all these loans. No, he's not. Pull his MMI numbers. Look and see what he's doing.
Just go to Modex and go, I just wonder. I'm just not judging, just wonder, just curious. So I have a real estate.
So one of the things.
Go ahead.
One of the things you wanted to know, I think a question you asked me before this podcast is, about branding, personal branding. And I said, do you want the down and dirty of it? And what I mean by the down and dirty of it is what people don't see is the sacrifice behind building a brand. Like we all hear like a brand evolves, a brand's what people say when you're not around. But a brand is something that's alive and it constantly changes. And you better be ready to implement something. You better be ready to have recovery rate. But the down and dirty part is, Greg, I'm not 100% certain that the way that we all poured ourselves into social media the last couple of years was at the right frequency. I think I poured too much into it. I think I poured too much into that, and then I forgot about some of this. And so the down and dirty part that most people won't talk about, that I'll talk about, is I made $1 million less in the last 12 months. Is some of it because I was fooling around on social media? I bet. Absolutely.
Yeah, the focus. Where's the focus?
Is it because I'm focused on those 3 channels or that video or whatever and not calling my partner it's his birthday today? Some of you referred me a deal, 2 weeks ago that I haven't talked to in a month. And that's where I took my eyes off the prize, and I think it affected my production. So I'm building it back now.
And I think it's a great ancillary. Like you have to get So one of my biggest teams, their standard is 20 connects a day as a real estate team. If you get your 20 connects, then you can go shoot the video.
20 connects.
It's necessary, but it's not necessary until you made the
Right.
20 connects. The business comes from the 20 connects. It comes from the level 10 open house. It comes from door knocking. It comes from circle prospecting. That's where the business comes from. The social media is just to show people who you are and what you're doing. So like their big thing is they don't shoot a whole lot of videos like we do. They don't really edutain, but what they do is document their day. And so if they document their day on all the things that they're doing, then when other people say like, hey, I want someone that's out there doing the things, open houses, door knocking, those things that I know are going to sell my house, I want to list with them. So they've shown that, yes, we need to have a presence, right? Like we talk about modern day sales, right? Be seen before you're known, like, and trusted. And so they do it. They just do it in a different way. Like I'm being seen, but I don't have to go out and have someone follow me around all day and do all these weird things. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do the jumping in the pools and all of those things as long as your nuts and bolts have been done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you can do is if you know what your nuts and bolts are, you can just say, hey, how does this other stuff factor into it? So I told a guy this morning that I was coaching, he's doing an event. He's got about 12, 13 realtors coming out. And I said, there's also a piece of content that you can post. Hey, I'm here at the realtor event. Got 14 pros that come out. I said, you got 14 people that you can DM and say thank you after. Actually, those 14 people, you should shoot a video personal to them. Probably take you a half hour. Tell them each thank you.
Yeah.
I said, you got to marry your activities together, right?
That's the whole purpose of the event anyway. It's like, how many connects do you get before the event? Personally invite, then confirm the invitation. Then a couple of days before, confirm and make sure, hey, I want you to know this is a private event. And so I'm really stoked that you're coming. But I just wanted to follow, make sure you're going to be here. Because if you're not, I'd like to offer that position to somebody else. There's 3 connects. Then you connect with them at the event, right? And like you said, you get a thank you note or a personal video after the event. And then you can still follow up again. So you've got like 6 follow-ups where I never once had to feel awkward about doing a cold call to call Cap to ask him if he wants to go to coffee so we can connect. No, I create a reason to connect. And then I connect over and over and over again where they're going to pick up my call or watch my video because they understand that I'm just grateful for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I think a lot of lenders, man, just underestimate the value that they can bring right now. They super overcomplicate it. And I've done this. I don't know if you've ever done it, Greg, but I'm giving this, presentation to realtors and, it's 12, PowerPoints deep. And then you'll do one that's like 5 PowerPoint slides with like 5 words on them that's black and white. And they'll be like, oh, it's the best one ever, right? Well, I went back and I looked at like trends and I studied like pastors and I studied like, people that I look up to, Ed Milet, those guys that Neil brings out and stuff, and Amir. And they do a couple of things. And I think if loan officers got better at this, then they're increase their initial contact. Like we're giving a master class right here. People should be taking notes. It's like initial contact, your IC. Then once you got your initial contact, then you go into discovery. By the way, this is the 4 parts of the sale. Then once you go into initial discovery, then you can go ahead and continue to build rapport and then you can close. So like if loan officers just focused more on that first part, initial contact and then discovery, asking lots of questions, I think we would be a lot more memorable. We'd have a lot more purpose. We'd be able to get in front of a lot more realtors and we'd bring a lot more value to realtors right now. But I think people overestimate that. And this guy that was doing this one this morning, he had the PowerPoints and I said, here's the things you need to do. Number 1, get the crowd involved. Get them to raise a hand, lower a hand, speak up, say something 2 or 3 times throughout. I like to do things where it's like, okay, everybody in the room, turn to the person on your right. The one with the longest hair goes first. Explain, and I do that once or twice or 3 times. I said, second thing you need to do, you need to get people to laugh. Have a go-to joke. Have a joke that, you got to break the room up. So I guess the moral of the story is, Greg, we can get in front of a bunch of realtors, but I think the secret sauce right now is being able to present ourselves to people concisely, clearly, and have a little bit of differentiator in there, but just that connectability and stuff. They just don't have it, or they're not working on it, I guess.
I think they just don't work on it. So a mentor of mine a long time ago, I watched him teach classes. And so it's what I do with most of my classes is I go in with really nothing, a whiteboard. And then if it's 8 or 9 realtors, I just say, hey, what are you guys struggling with today? what's in your business in sales? Are you getting any objections? Like, what are the things? And like, what do you guys want to learn today? And they tell me, and I write it on a board, on the whiteboard. I write down all the things that they say that they want to learn. And then I look at one and I go, okay, you guys have to have up here this rates. Okay, let's talk about objection handlers for rates. Did you know what does it cost if they rate? And so then I just go through everything that they told me they wanted to learn. I mean, obviously it comes with years of experience of being in the loan business, but you could also, if you studied enough, I think we've gotten away from that. You know, something that you had talked about earlier, and I believe you learned it from your mom, is we have the most resources we've ever had, yet people are the least resourceful.
Absolutely.
Right. And one of the biggest traits you can have, at least in our industry, is resourcefulness. Like, we are a mini core, so we bank most of our loans and we broker exotic stuff. And so I don't have a lot of lenders that we broker to. And my team will be like, hey, can we get approved with this people and these people and these people? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's just more systems for you to learn. It's more processes for the processor to learn. It's more check.
There you go.
I go, and I don't want to sound like a dick, but most people don't have the bandwidth to understand all that. When I started in this business, we had 100 lenders. But I knew out of those 100, the 30 that I was going to use them, what I was going to use them for. And I had a notebook.
Yeah.
It showed me exactly what they were good for. They were tabbed. This is stated income for investment. This is this. This is this. And I could just go to my tab, and that was a submission checklist. This is how they wanted it stacked. Like, you know what I mean? Back when we used paper still. And so I had the bandwidth to know, like, this is my renovation loan. This is my this loan. Nowadays, people, it's like you have everything at your fingertips, yet you have no clue where to go.
Yeah.
So knowing those things, and that's just how I was taught. Plus, I have a need to be right and a need not to be wrong, which are my best and worst traits. Right. So I don't like to be put on the spot. And yes, you can say, let me find out, but I believe you can only say that so many times. That shouldn't be your go-to answer. You should have some knowledge about what you do. And so I can go teach that class and feel really confident about whatever they throw at me, that I'm going to be able to, in some way, add value on that topic. And then when we leave the class for that day, I didn't show up and tell them what I wanted them to learn. I showed up and I taught them what they asked to learn. And so that's where that impact will come. I believe it becomes a lot more. And then when you get to follow up, you can do more things with it. So,
so I am teaching this new series to realtors out there, and I'm going to do sit down 25 realtors at a time that I was telling you about. And I kind of racked my brain for, last year or two, Greg, around something, and I couldn't put my thumb on it. I couldn't figure it out. But all I could do is I could just feel that there was noise in the industry. And I don't know if you or any of the listeners feel this way, but I felt like, okay, I know there's a massive amount of people out there that want to buy a house or want to sell a house or want to build a house, want to renovate a house, want to buy investment property. I know there's a demand and there's a need, but I'm curious what percentage of people, and this thought came up initially when somebody came to me and they said, would you at least talk to my sister-in-law? She's been told no by another mortgage company. She almost refuses to talk to anybody else, but I've gotten her to agree to take a call with you. And I said, absolutely. Long story short, fast forward, we ended up being able to talk to the lady. She had 10% down with a 525 credit score, went FHA, ended up getting her in her house, close all of that. And I was like, I wonder how much noise is in the market that's keeping people from buying a home. So what I decided was I was going to figure this out, and then a light bulb went off a couple of months ago. I figured it out. Every single industry has a scripted process. When I was at the restaurant, there was a scripted process to go up to the table. When the order went back to the back of the house, there was a recipe. That's a scripted process. When any people were in the military, it was a scripted process, right? Like everything. So we are in one of the largest commission dollar amount products that you can be in out there. Yet we don't have a scripted universal scripted process. So I said, you know what? I'm going to change this. I think that's what the problem is. I think the problem is a realtor doesn't sit down in the living room with a client and say the 5 most important words you can ever say to someone. And I bet you don't do it every time either, Greg, either. And I don't do it every time either, is you are important to me. Realtors, do you think that if you told your client sitting in the living room looking at a husband and wife and said, I want you to know one thing, one of my value systems is this, and you are important to me. Like little tiny stuff like this, Greg, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, step 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Sit in your car, pull out your phone, open up the video, be a modern realtor, modern lender, and say, hey, I know I'm just leaving your house, Greg. But before I get too busy and get headed down the road, I want to let you know that I'm honored that you invited me in. You could have invited out any thousands of realtors in this town. And I'm extremely honored. I'm going to work my butt off for you when I list your home. We're going to have a good time doing it. I'm going to get you top dollar. I look forward to talking to you. I look forward to doing the job for you. Like, what if you just send a text, video text like that immediately when you're sitting in the car of every listing? Do you think the other guy's doing that? And so that's what I think I hit the nail on the head. And so I wrote out a 59-page script, literally, that I was like, I'm going to take it all the way from unique value proposition to the importance of a script, make my point. Then I'm going to bring it to the point that we're all going to agree we don't have a scripted process. And I'm going to show them where to start and exactly how they can do it as a realtor. And then get this, when they're done, they can scan a QR code and they get a customized buyer presentation made for them with all their logos, phone numbers, everything.
I need the QR code so I can scan it and rip it off.
Try it out. I'll send you a test. But this is what the modern day loan officer better do. This is what the little guy down the road that's not building relationships every day should better do. Because either Rocket's going to gobble up your business or I'm going to gobble up your business.
Yeah.
Like, this is my last go around. I probably only got 3, 4, 5 years in me of doing this stuff. So like, I got to go big. I'm going to set up to help a lot of people. And I think that we're all going to have to start thinking a little differently. Who Moved My Cheese is a great book to read right now. And also the Pink Bat's another good one. It's all about change, baby. All about change, adapt and change, speed to implementation.
So how do you, something that I'm not great at, I don't really believe in a work-life balance because when I think of balance, I think of like the justice scales, right? And if I think about the justice scales, balance is at 0, right? Both things are at 0. So I'm giving nothing to nothing in my brain. So I like to look at rhythm or harmony. I have really good conversations with my wife on what our goals are and what it's going to take to achieve those goals. And if we're going to achieve those goals, there's going to be sacrifice a lot on her part. Time-wise, I get messed with a lot because in my calendar from 6 to 8 is time blocked. It says Melinda time. Melinda's my wife. And so people say, well, that's rude. And she says she's honored that she made the calendar. And so, it's just perspective, right? The lenses that you're working.
Absolutely.
You use. Now I don't come away from that. Like, that's her time. I get up at 3 every day, and from 3 to 6, it's Greg time, it's work time, it's workout time, it's loan officer time, it's realtor time, it's everybody else's time. So she does deserve 2 hours a day. And so how do you work through those things? I mean, I know you have home office, you have regular office. Like, there's things that we can do now that we couldn't do 20 years ago. And so how do you work through that with your family, with your girls, with your wife? How do you allocate time? And, like, nobody wants to work 24 hours a day. And there's, like you said, you have 3, 5, 6 years left. Most loan officers are self-insured, meaning we're not getting big pensions. Like, we don't work for a company that's like, oh, Greg, we've been stocking this for you for the last 30 years and you're good. Like, we're self-insured. Like, we have to put our own money away. We have to figure out those investments and do those things. So how do you balance that, for lack of a better term?
Man, that's a huge question. Great question. And just what first comes to my mind is, I would say, if I was taking notes, I'd write down stay hungry. So I was always told to stay hungry. Well, growing up, when you wanted something, like, that was easy. I was hungry then. But what's really tough is when you start making some money, pay off your debt, and you got some money in the bank, staying hungry then. So at first, having another child freaked me out. So that would always keep me staying hungry. Then I had a mentor who told me I needed to buy this big old house to entertain, and I'd make more money and the house would pay for itself. And he was right. And I did, but that motivated me. Then I moved my business. So I always stay hungry, Greg, by trying to make sure I'm reaching to try to do something big or new that a lot of other people won't do. But the work-life balance part is this. I think it's a myth, by the way. It's exactly what you said, which is about rhythms. So it's about seasons, and that's what the Bible talks about, you know. And if most people look, if anybody listens to this and they took away one thing from this, it would be start recognizing your life is not a constant, it's seasons, and you're just in a season. And if you're in a good season, you better be enjoying it and be thankful. Like I told people 2 years ago, I was like, this is the best of the times in the mortgage industry. You better be thankful for this. It'll never be like this again. Well, look what happened. I don't think it'll ever be like it was ever again. We'll have to put up a lot more. But
I love the saying, this too shall pass. And people always think it's only for bad times, right? But it's for good times.
yeah,
Like, this too shall pass. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And, you know, what I started telling myself instead of that is I say, life is happening for me, not to me. So what's the lesson in this? It's everything's happening for me. So what the hell's the lesson in this right now? But, you know, to answer your question about work-life balance, I remember when we started in a career and I was really, really just doing, I was working too much. I was 80, 90 hours. Jennifer said she was going to leave me if I didn't get it straight. I met somebody that came into my life and showed me how to hire my first assistant. That was a game changer. But I remember one of the things they coached me on was they were like, hey, I want you to be like all in with your wife when you're at home. And this was before like iPhones really took off and dominated our lives, you know, but it was like when you get home at 6, put the phone on the counter and in the charger and then leave it alone. But tell your wife when you're at work, you're at work. So that way you're all in when you're at work. If she calls, you know it's an emergency. Otherwise, tell her to text you. And then in the evenings, you tell her you're going to be uninterrupted. And if you are on your phone, you want to be called out on it. And that was my journey to starting to get off the phone in the evenings and texting people and taking loan apps in the evening and stuff. But my family, man, just knows that my rhythm is crazy. Like they know I go a million miles a minute, but fortunately it motivated me so much to get to the point that I want my work to be driven to give me the quality of life I want. And I can now leave the office for a week and my business runs and loans still close. When I turn 50, I want to take a month off. I want to take 30 days off. That's a big goal. So that's motivating me to build something. So stay hungry.
how old are you now?
I'm 46.
46. So 4 more years.
4 more years. I'm going to take a whole month off for a sabbatical during the month of May.
Oh, yeah, because your birthday is the same as my wife's. I found that out the other day.
Oh, yeah. May 7th, right? She messaged me the other day. She's like, and then she had somebody else she knew that it was their birthday. Do you have a child with a birthday?
Days that day I found out. So that's
Okay.
the cool thing about Facebook too, is you can see like, oh wow, there's a lot of people with the same birthday. So this was our big year. I turned 50 last year. She turned 40 this year. So that was
Wow.
her big hurrah. So yeah, I think I love that. Stay hungry. I find that if I put myself in a position where I have to perform, I perform. Right. And so I really like doing uncomfortable things on my own and putting myself in positions like that, so that when they do come up, I don't hesitate as much. Now I still do. There's still things where I still procrastinate on certain things, and sometimes a lot of things. And in that, I can understand. I can go back. Well, if this was this, what would you do? It's like, okay, you need.
When you were in the military, Greg, did you get to like express a lot of your choices or emotions about things?
I mean, I did. I just had to do a lot for that. Like,
I mean, what I'm saying is, were you allowed to say, you know, I feel this way about this. I don't really want to do this.
no.
Right. So that's the problem in our industry is you ask the work-life balance question, you know, the work-life balance question, like the tactical part of it is most people don't have boundaries set up to say, hey, my last appointment of the day is at 5:30 to 6, which I have an appointment already booked at 6:00, which is with my family, but everybody doesn't need to know that.
Correct.
But it starts with running a really, really super tight calendar and not have choices, because guys like you and me and a lot of the sales folks out there, left to our own devices, we will find stuff to fool around and waste a bunch of time and not be efficient. So it's best to have a really full calendar. And part of that can be your family, where it's like, hey, in the morning, like you, Greg, I admire that about you, you know, date night weekly with my daughters, date night, you know, at least once a month with my wife, but we usually do it every 2 weeks. Certain things that should be in there, just like anything else, like you said about your wife. And I think it's an honor that your wife made it to your calendar, because I think people say, you know, if you want to see what's important to you, take a look at where they spend their time. Good job on that, Greg.
Awesome. Well, Cap, I really appreciate you being on. I know we've been trying to get together for a little while now. So I'm glad that we finally got to do it. And I'm stoked to see you, in about a month and a half? Are you coming out to?
Yeah, a month and a half, about 45 days, man.
Awesome. Well, if there's anything I can ever do for you, please always reach out. And I appreciate you do way more for me than you'll ever know. I get a lot of your emails and your tips, and I get to use those to give to my realtors. And so I love watching you and following you. And thank you so much for being you.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you later.